These steps will enhance our productivity, raising wages without raising prices. That won't increase inflation. It will take the pressure off of inflation, give a boost to our workforce, which leads to lower prices in the years ahead. So if your primary concern right now is inflation, you should be even more enthusiastic about this plan.
All right, well, Senator Lindsey Graham is taking a page out of the Texas Democrats' playbook. He says he's willing to leave town to prevent Democrats from passing their $3.5 trillion budget plan. Let's find out more about this from Newsmax national correspondent Logan Ratick. Logan, tell us about Lindsey Graham's runaway plan to save America.
Well, Joe, when it comes to Senator Graham and this proposal from the Democrats, he's making it very clear where he stands. He says that in terms of the $3.5, and I'm quoting now, $trillion tax and spend dream of the socialist left, end quote, he'll do just about anything he can.
You got to have a quorum to pass a bill in the Senate. I would leave before I'd let that happen. So to my Republican colleagues, we may learn something from our Democratic friends in Texas when it comes to avoiding a $3.5 trillion tax and spend package. Leave town.
Graham's referencing the trip made by more than 50 Texas Democrats leaving their home state on a private charter flight to Washington, D.C. And South Carolina's senior senator is doubling down on his threat.
If you think these people are heroes, well, then I expect you to show up and pat us on the back. Hell yeah, I would leave. I will use everything lawfully in my toolbox to prevent rampant inflation.
And Senator Graham says Republican efforts to secure the southern border are, quote, dead and buried and replaced by the party of open borders. He says Senate Democrats don't want to work with Republicans and that he's disappointed in his former colleague, President Biden's tenure.
So he can't talk about policy because he's failed on the policy front, so he's trying to make all of us racist as Republicans. I've known Joe Biden for 20, 25 years. I've never seen this Joe Biden. This is demagoguery. It's offensive to me.
Now, the Senate's back here on Capitol Hill. The White House is not responding so far to Graham's comments, but there is a separate bill that's in the works, a bipartisan spending plan. Senator Chuck Schumer, the majority leader, is scheduled to vote for Wednesday, but that bill has not been written yet, and no details really have been released other than what we've known about the talks so far. And Senator Rob Portman says that group of bipartisan senators, 21 in total, don't want to meet anyone's arbitrary deadline, so they may have a vote on Wednesday on a piece of legislation that's still undrafted. Back to you.
Unbelievable. It used to be you had to vote on the bill before you could see it. Now apparently you got to vote on it before it's even been written. Thanks, Logan. We're checking with you in a little bit. Joining us now, conservative TV host and New York Times bestselling author Eric Bolling. Eric, thank you so much for joining us. Look, perhaps we should take a page out of the Democrats' playbook and leave town. People forget we already spent $6 trillion in COVID relief under this president that had very little to do with COVID. Now they're proposing another $3.5 trillion in spending, which I will continue to remind people is more than the cost of FDR's New Deal adjusted for inflation 3 times. You still have some scratch left over. What do we do to get America back on track and save our financial security?
Hey, Joe, so let's start with forget the $3.5 trillion just for 1 second. Joe Biden said we should be welcoming all his spending and it should be a great thing for inflation. He must have failed Econ 101 in high school. I'm not sure if he went to college or not, because no good professor would teach you that if you flood any market with more money, you have more money chasing after the same amount of goods. We're coming out of COVID. There's not the supply chain we've talked about constantly. You can't get things from China. So more money chasing after the same goods. Prices are going up. That, by definition, very definition, is inflation. So the more he continues to write checks to everyone, inflation will continue to go up. We're on a 20-year high. We'll probably make new all-time highs very, very soon. The $1 trillion that they're talking about doing closer on $1 trillion of spending right now on infrastructure. That doesn't have anything to do with the $3.5 trillion that they want to talk about on Wednesday. So now we're up to $4.5 trillion in the next 72 hours. Next week, another $900 billion. So $5 trillion of new spending into this market will rocket inflation straight up. That's $5 trillion, by the way. That's bigger than every single economy in the world with the exception of the United States, China, and Japan. It's as big as Germany, just the additional spending, not everything else, just what they're asking to do, not what they've already done. Bigger than Germany, bigger than Russia, bigger than Canada, all of them. Bigger, just additional spending. So this will rocket inflation. Lindsey Graham's right. I think they do need a quorum. They probably have ways to go around what Lindsey Graham is suggesting. But for now, it will call the attention to all the spending that the Democrats want to do. And again, that $3.5 trillion on Wednesday, they have to score that. The CBO has to score that. So they're going to come back and say, yeah, we have $3.5 trillion just for that one piece of legislation, but here's how you're going to pay for it. I don't think they're ever going to find a way to pay for it. This will be $3.5 trillion spent by the Democrats alone. The $1 trillion infrastructure that we're talking today and then pushed through on Wednesday, likely by Schumer, that's money that Joe Biden already said he had. Turns out Republicans are giving him a little bit of a hard time, and that's good news for the economy.
I mean, it's really clear. We've locked in this inflation, and the only people that don't seem to know it are the Biden administration as they run around the countryside trying to advocate for policies that codify forever.
They know it. They just don't want to admit it. And this is the very definition of how you inflate prices, by throwing more money at the same amount. It is perfect definition, a textbook, a Harvard definition of inflation. They know it. They just realize that as you go into 2022 election, if there's inflation and the average American was making the same amount of money or making a little bit more because they're getting those free checks, but can't afford stuff, they can't afford housing, they can't afford rents anymore, gasoline's through the roof, meat's through the roof, it's not going to bode well for the Democrats in midterm. I do believe this inflation, and especially the new push of inflation that will happen after they sign this, will be the death of the Democrat-run House and Senate after 2022, after November of 22.
Absolutely. It's a short squeeze on the American people. The seniors, they're hoping, don't realize that they don't have enough money left in that retirement fund as inflation goes up. The people who have their wages going up, they're hoping they don't realize that those higher wages don't buy as much. Eric, we appreciate you, my friend. We'll talk to you again soon.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.